Hey everybody, we're getting more chairs put out right now, so if you have not found a spot, you soon will have one. Welcome everyone to another Third Friday here at the wonderful Chicago Maritime Museum. Thank you all so much for joining us on one of the few beautiful nights we've had in Chicago this summer. I appreciate your sacrifice by spending your evening in a basement, although I am sure you will all find it is well worth your while to come on inside this time. Before we introduce our fabulous speaker, just a couple things you should have on our radar, your radar. Of course, we have our wonderful exhibition, A Decade on the Creek, open through the rest of the year. We will be having more pop-ups and exhibitions in our library space throughout the rest of the year, so make sure you follow us on all of our social media and our newsletter. We will also soon be announcing the date for our annual Fall Festival, our big annual fundraiser, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. Also, if you are watching at home, you have noticed that the name on the Teams link is no longer Isabel Carrillo. Our wonderful museum associate, Isabel, left after about 2 years to start her library degree. And so now the name here and the face you're about to see is Joseph Gamble, our new museum associate. So I will be introducing Joe, who will come up and introduce our speaker today. Yeah, big thumbs up for Joe, Toby, I agree. Joe Gamble is a native of East Tennessee, a former park ranger, and a lover of historic canoes. He moved to Chicago in 2024 and immediately started volunteering here at CMM, helping with field trips and the canoe collection, and a lot of other things, Joe, thank you. Magic erased a lot of this floor that you are standing on and enjoying. He is now officially the museum associate here at the museum, so if you come on a weekday, you will see him at our front desk, and we have to thank him for our fabulous speaker tonight. So let's give a round of applause for Joe.
Hello. Hello. So, you all here aren't here to listen to me speak. You can do that on the weekday. So for this evening, I have a special treat thanks to a buddy of mine who it was one of those things. When I moved to Chicago, and they're like, you got to know a guy. And well, thankfully to the folks at the museum, I know a few guys. So one of them is a fellow named Mitchell Trachtenberg, and Mitchell had to work with me at the Bridge House Museum for last year and put up with my puns about ponts and bridges and things. So I'm sure you'll hear even more from him. So Mitchell is a native Chicagoan, unlike myself, is a graduate from UIC. He has long had an interest in Chicago's bridges, their engineering, the art in their lines, and how their design changed to bring us to the present. He most recently led tours from the current Bridge House and Chicago River Museum downtown on the Riverwalk, and currently works in transportation planning. So, did I leave anything out? In that case, give a round of applause for Mitchell. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joe. That was so kind. And thank you all for being here tonight. What an amazing thing. I get to talk about bridges with y'all. Cool. So, let's get started. This talk is called Chicago's Bridges, the Brilliance and Blunder. Now, a few years ago, I was working for a software company. I was pretty unhappy there. But I was living in Lakeview. I was living right off Ashland, and I'd take the 9 bus all the time right down Ashland. And whenever we crossed the river, we'd see this gigantic structure looming over the rest of the street. Massive concrete blocks hovering over the ground, suspended, connected to a spider web of solid steel and iron. And it got me thinking, what was this thing? Why is it here in the middle of a chill residential area? And it's gigantic, but why is nobody talking about it? It's not like a landmark that anyone mentions. Like, it's just this massive elephant in the room that we just sort of live our lives around. So those 3 questions, what is this, why is it here, and why aren't people talking about it? Answering those questions led me down a rabbit hole that changed my life. I began to unearth a treasure trove of stories, of all kinds of history, all kinds of facts that completely changed the way that I viewed Chicago. I quit my job, wound up getting an urban planning master's degree, and now I'm working as a transportation planner. So honestly, I've just found these bridges to be so fascinating to study, and I'm really excited to share with you why I think so. So, why Chicago bridges? Well, first things first, there are 37 of them. Chicago has more bridges, more drawbridges than any other city in the entire world. Almost every other city in the entire world. Listen, that's not fair. Amsterdam is set on 90 islands. I don't think that's a fair fight. But these bridges have evolved. They've been there with Chicago as we've evolved from a tiny town of 100 people all the way up to the modern metropolis that we are today. And we can actually track the evolution of our city and the planning philosophy that went into our city just by looking at how our bridges have evolved. I was gonna say, now there's one more element about bridges that I want us to think about, and that's infrastructure. What do we think about less than the ground beneath our feet? You only really talk about infrastructure, again, infrastructure, the backbone of human civilization. The only time you think about it is when something goes wrong, when there's a massive crack in the sidewalk, when you drive over a pothole. Yeah, exactly, you know. But when you hear the bells of a drawbridge, let me see, is this gonna play? Oh, West access. You know what? It's just a video of a drawbridge going up. When you hear the bells of the drawbridge, and when you see the gates lower and the street gently begin to list upwards, you begin to see that the infrastructure of our city, the bones of our city, are as alive as the bones within our bodies. And bridges are a constant reminder of that, especially the drawbridges that Chicago has so many of. Now, you would be forgiven for forgetting about the importance of this infrastructure because that is just what the planners of Chicago wanted. Because, and this is a very key point that we'll be coming back to, Chicago was built under the idea that the city has to look like it works like magic. That we're not going to let anybody have to think about any of the dirty stuff that makes cities work. So part of when I talk about bridges, I'm also calling attention to the thousands of Chicagoans that are working day in and day out to make everything look seamless. Now, before we talk about bridges, we got to talk about the time before bridges. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here because this is the Maritime Museum, but Chicago is a maritime city, and it has been used for generations, for centuries, as a strategic waterway. The fact that Chicago, where it currently is, could connect the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River even before the I&M Canal. You know, all these different tribes that were here before, the Council of the Three Fires, the Ondawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi, were routinely they recognized the strategic importance of Chicago. And it wasn't really until 1820 when we started prospecting for the I&M Canal to officially connect them that this story usually begins, but I just had to acknowledge that. Again, this is where you can see the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River watershed. But now we're going to dive in to the early bridges, what I'll call the Blunder years, the Blunder and the Bridges and Blunder. So again, this is what Chicago used to be. Again, we were on a marshland. Some friends at the Bridge House Museum corrected me whenever I said swampland. It's marshland. And again, that's Florida, right? And it was just this very, very, there wasn't a huge population there. The shores were very low. There was this massive sandbar right at the mouth of the river. But there was a hotel called the Sauganash. The Sauganash was run by a man named Mark Beaubien. And Mark Beaubien also ran the ferry system. The ferry was the only way you could cross the river back in the 1820s. Now, I've heard a couple things about Mark Beaubien. Some call him an incredible person who was a really massive staple in the community. Another resource called him a horrible, horrible businessman, a compulsive gambler, it said that he would take the blankets off of sleeping guests because they didn't need them anymore and give them to new guests so he could expand the capacity of his hotel. Look, I don't want to slander Mark Bobian if that last story isn't true, but the part of that story that really calls to me is the fact that apparently he would shirk his responsibilities for running the ferry to go gamble. And meanwhile, there would be a long line of people waiting for the ferry, just getting increasingly annoyed, much like how you might feel nowadays when a bridge is up. It's just kind of the same thing. So all these different frustrations about the ferry, whether or not Mark Bobian, I don't want to slander him if he really was an awesome person. All of this really led to the fact that we needed to build a bridge. It was 1831. We really didn't know how. So going back here, that's so wacky. Oh, that's hilarious. Thank you. I appreciate that. View, slideshow. Okay, now the story actually begins. This is what we, oh, interesting.
Sorry about this, folks.
Technical difficulties.
Little freelancing,
Sure.
freestyling on bridges right now. Bridge wrap. I see why this isn't. We were here.
Oh,
This is
it. So, as with a lot of the stories that we're going to tell about horrible bridge disasters, this was user error on my part. I think it's actually very appropriate because I'm going to be saying some very mean things about certain sailors and certain bridge tenders, and I think it's just nice to remember, humble myself. So, several locations. This was our Mississippi watershed, and these were our early bridges, the Blunder years. This was the Hotel Sauganash. Here we are. Now, there are no photos of this first bridge in Chicago, so I put together a very detailed artistic rendering for you. It was a wooden footbridge that was put together, a bunch of community members and supposedly some members of the local Potawatomi tribe threw together $500 to put this bridge together. And I'm sure that this bridge at Kinsey Street had a very long and fruitful life. It didn't last long, though, because the settlers took to carrying it off log by log for firewood over the long, hard winter. Come on, people. The forest is right there. The forest is right there. I guess the bridge was a little bit closer. That bridge apparently did not last long because they just decided to use the wood for firewood. Okay, now let's build another bridge. Maybe this one will have a better fate. This was called the Dearborn Bridge. It was at modern day Dearborn. It was what was called a gallows bridge because people approaching the city would feel very uncomfortable when they saw what looked like two gigantic gallows rising up from the ground. They were like, oh, something bad must be happening in Chicago. And they were right. Something bad was happening in Chicago. This bridge was bad, and it was happening in Chicago. It once got stuck open for 2 days straight. It's gotten stuck closed. It's gotten stuck halfway. The citizens hated it. After 5 years of lobbying, the citizens finally convinced the city to take down this bridge and potentially build something better. Now, the city agreed, but at the last minute, they said, you know what? I think we can sneak another year out of this. You see, the wheels of bureaucracy moved just as slow in 1839 as they do right now. The citizens did not like that, and they decided to take matters into their own hands. They gathered like a community in an axe-wielding mob in the middle of the night, and here is another interpretation of what happened. For those keeping score, Chicago has built 2 bridges in the first 8 years of our existence as a city, and the citizens have destroyed both of them. I think being a bridge might have been the most dangerous thing to be in Chicago. So in 1840, or so after this happened, the city's like, all right, no more bridges for a while. We'll try to throw together something with pontoons. I could not find any actual photos of this online. This is a wooden pontoon swing bridge. This is a book by Patrick McBriarty that I literally just took a photo of because there was no other way to be able to show this to you. But apparently there were pivot points, and these pontoons, it would literally float and it would open. Again, not a good system. People would fall off all the time. And in 1849, the flood of Chicago happened. I guess the first flood of Chicago happened. You see, now the river, you see it freeze up during really cold months. Back then, there were actually dams of ice that sprouted up all over the place. And eventually, as the spring started to settle in, the dams began to melt and water rushed through, destroying everything in its path. Gosh. And all the bridges were destroyed. Gosh, can somebody please just invent the swing bridge so the madness can end? The madness continues. But we got swing bridges now. Swing bridges were invented they were first installed in Chicago in 1854. This is what they looked like. There was a center pier that the bridges would sit on, and boats could move on either side of it. Now, this is what they looked like when they were open. Now, if you think about a drawbridge now as we know about it, like when they open the drawbridge, the road itself is a wall that stops you from walking into the water. These didn't have those. Yeah, I know people would just kind of walk into the water. Again, they didn't have phones that they were staring at. People just never had a good attention span, I guess. This, by the way, is what they would sit on. There were actual beds of wheels. You can see this at Cherry Avenue on the northern tip of Goose Island. I'll talk about this bridge a little bit later. But, oh gosh, these were a navigational hazard. You know, boats would hit them. I read one thing that said wooden walkways on the sides of these bridges would act as crumple zones, like in your car. So if you hit the bridge, only the walkway would get destroyed. So this, unfortunately, madness began only about a year after these bridges were started. This is the Clark Street Bridge. Joe, my friend, of course, is under the impression that the Clark Street Bridge is cursed, and still is. And I wonder if this might be a little bit of the source. In 1855, a man named Levi Boone was elected mayor. This is what's known as the Lager Beer Riot. See, Levi Boone was a nativist. He hated he basically hated any immigrant. And his first decrees when he got into office were to try to anger as many people as he could. He stopped liquor from being able to be sold on Sundays, which angered the Germans. And he he made it so that you had to be native born in order to be in the police force, which angered the Irish people. So now you have an angry mob of German and Irish immigrants who are marching towards City Hall. This is the Clark Street Bridge. City Hall's right on the other side of it. So these people get onto the Clark Street Bridge, and what does the bridge tender do? He presses pause on the invasion by opening the bridge. And it was kind of absurd, the fact that they could actually press pause in this invasion, line up all the defensive forces that they needed, and then a riot happened. We do not know what the death toll is because a lot of the immigrant community wanted to keep a lot of things anonymous to basically protect themselves, but it's not a very great start to our tenure with drawbridges, and it doesn't get much better for a while. This is the Rush Street Bridge. This is the first bridge that was ever built made of iron west of the Allegheny. So huge technological achievement. This was around modern day Michigan Avenue. One of the most important navigable one of the most important, oh, you're totally good. One of the most important places in the city if you wanted to cross the river. So one day in 1863, two cattle drivers are taking 136 cows over this bridge. Now the bridge tender was drunk, as a lot of them were. Yeah, it wasn't great. He also, it's important to note that bridge tenders, to quote a Tribune article, they knew which side of their bread was buttered. They were always told to prioritize water navigation over people trying to cross them over land. Because, I mean, that's where Chicago got its money, through the shipping. So his immediate drunken thought is, I need to just keep this bridge open as often as I can. Oh, is that a boat? 2 blocks away, I gotta open this bridge right now, even though there are 136 cows on it. Now, what happens if you're a cow and the ground beneath your feet begins to move? You're not having fun. You're not used to the ground moving. You're used to the ground being food. And then this happens. Now, fortunately, cows can swim. I was actually leading a tour, and this little girl was like, "Oh, all the cows died?" And fortunately, there was a farmer also on the tour who was able to say, "No, the cows actually survived because they could swim." And I checked, and the cows did survive. One of the cattle drivers did not. The other one decided this was not his problem and just sauntered off somewhere else. But this meant that I swear there was a herd of cattle that were just wandering freely in the streets of Chicago for like weeks afterwards, until maybe they wandered too close to the stockyards. Not a very fun place to be a cow. Not a very fun place, again, to be a bridge. In 1871, the next Clark Street Bridge burned down in the Great Chicago Fire. One of the most impressive things about rebuilding after the fire is all of our bridges were destroyed, but we rebuilt them all within like 1 to 2 years. Just an amazing achievement to be able to get that done. And we had temporary structures. We got really good before at building those pontoon things, so we just used those for a little while. There was one really heroic story that I read about. There was a bridge tender during the fire because everyone was running over the bridges to try to escape. There was a bridge tender, probably a few of them, who wanted to save their bridges. So they would open the bridges, disconnecting them from the street so it wouldn't catch fire. But in one case, a man actually stood with 1 foot on the bridge and with 1 foot on the mainland. So the bridge tender could not open the bridge to allow people to be able to cross over to the other side. So that guy probably saved a lot of lives. I feel really bad that I don't know his name. Neither did the article that I learned this from. So back to those crumple zones we were talking about. It's important to note that when the first swing bridge was built in Chicago, the city had a population of about 30,000 people. When the last swing bridge was built in Chicago, the city had a population of about 1 million. That was about 50 years. Imagine being born in a town the size of Jefferson Park, and you never move, and by the time you leave, it is a gigantic 1 million person city. Half the size of Chicago, a little less than half the size of Chicago now. Our bridges were not built for that. Again, we cut the river in half. You could only pass on one side of it. So we opened the bridge, and you still could only get a certain size vessel to the other side. Look at how massive that bridge is trying to pass on the far side. It was a terrible idea. It was an especially terrible idea for a man named Ava Smith. Ava Smith is captaining the Sandmaster. The Sandmaster is a type of boat called the Sandblaster. I think that's kind of funny. Sandmaster, the Sandblaster. What isn't funny is what's happening in the background. That bridge is not supposed to have that angle to it. You see, Ava has just struck and destroyed what bridge, Joe? Clark Street Bridge number 7. Ava has destroyed the Clark Street Bridge number 7. Now, Ava Smith had a decent alibi. He said he was already passing by the bridge, and the bridge tender swung it back in the opposite direction and hit him. Kind of has shades of the tree hit me at 30 miles an hour. Now, I am not inclined to give Ava the benefit of the doubt, because this destroyed the Clark Street Bridge. Here is what he was doing before that. This is another view of the Clark Street Bridge, and what you see listed off to the side is the results of a Tribune investigation into the 43 other accidents that Ava Smith had had over the past 3 years. This man had 43 collisions with bridges over the past 3 years, then hits Clark Street and destroys Clark Street. It needs to be replaced. The city of Chicago said, listen, fool me 43 times, shame on you. Fool me 44 times, shame on me. We are suspending you from the water. Anyone want to guess how long he was suspended from the water? 2 months?
100 years.
100 years? 2 months is way closer. Y'all, it was 30 days. Oh, he absolutely did. But you want to guess what happened 30 days later? Number 45! He did it again! Listen, we all have our passions. It might be sailing, it might be poetry, it might be music, it might be art. I hope we all get to live into our passions the way that Ava Smith got to live into his passion for hitting bridges with boats. Because he was good at it. It might have been the only thing he was good at. But 1890's rolling around. By the way, these did happen a little bit. These collisions did happen a little bit later. We'll kind of get to why. In 1890, the city passed the the federal government passed the Rivers and Harbors Act. This was very bad news for Chicago because it meant that Chicago immediately had to figure out how to open up their entire waterway. They were tired of these collisions. They needed Chicago's waterways to be fully navigable for military vessels. The Army Corps of Engineers was also put in charge of those inland waterways. Chicago needed to figure out some way to open the entire span of the water. And we did not have the technology then. We had a few different ideas on how we might be able to achieve it, hence the rockers, seesaws, and lifts. This is what the city looked like then. I want to give an advisory. The photo I'm about to show you is of a bridge that the city tried to build. It was the only idea they had after this act was passed. It is a absolutely disgusting looking bridge. I will try not to keep it on screen for too long. That's also a photo that I had to take of this book. It is called the Jackknife Bridge. If a bridge is ever named after, if a bridge ever shares a name with a semi-truck accident, it's not a good bridge. We built this at Weed Street. I feel like you need to be under some sort of mind-altering substance to think this was a good idea anyway. But after the 1890 Rivers and Harbors Act was passed, Chicago still wanted to build a bridge at Canal Street. And so they tried to lobby to still let the city or let the federal government let them build a swing bridge. Federal government said no. And you know what we did? We built another of these. Did not last long. The city was really trying to look everywhere they could. Fortunately, a man named William Scherzer had an idea. The Scherzer Rolling Lift Bridge. This was a bridge. It was called a bascule bridge. We'll talk more about these bascules later. Bascule is French for seesaw. You know, the same way you're sitting on a seesaw, you want your friend to go up in the air, you got to put a lot of pressure on the other side so it goes up. It's perfectly balanced. So there was a counterweight on one side, and the counterweight would go down, the bridge would go up, and these actually worked like rocking chairs. If you look and you see towards the ground, there's kind of a wheel-like thing. It actually rolls upwards. Chicago built the first ever Scherzer Rolling Lift Bridge at Van Buren Street. Scherzer Rolling Lift Bridges are everywhere now. They started here in Chicago. We actually still have a few today. This is the 8-track Pennsylvania Railroad Bridge down in around Little Village. This is actually four bridges that are like interspersed with each other. And you can actually see the rockers very clearly, that like curve on the very edges. That right by where that T and where that C is, that's the counterweight that would go down. Now the problem with these bridges, and the reason why this Van Buren Street Bridge didn't last very long, and why Scherzer's contracts with the city didn't last long, is that the city was built on marshland. And those rockers would need constant maintenance, and they would actually sink into the ground, and the bridge would crash into itself as it was going. It was a horrible idea. It was a great idea, but Chicago had the wrong geography for it. Now, Scherzer himself, he refused. He refused to actually add the reinforcements that were needed because that meant his bridge would no longer be the cheapest. But the city still needed to build the cheapest bridge, so they just continued to build these bridges that they knew weren't going to work. And for 10 years, Scherzer Rolling Lift Bridges were the only bridges that we built. I think we built about 10 of them. But we did also try this. We built this at Halsted Street. So this is at South Halsted Street. This is a vertical lift bridge. It's actually the most efficient kind of design when it comes to the weight ratios that you need. So there's a counterweight at the top, and the entire bridge lifts up like an elevator. So if a rolling lift bridge is a rocking chair, this is an elevator. The problem, as quoted by a 1980 article in the Tribune as like a bridge retrospective, the problem the city had with it was, quotes, it's ugly. We needed our bridges to be beautiful. But we still built these in industrial areas. How am I doing on time, by the way? Awesome. Cool. Awesome. Wait, actually? No way. You're famous. That's awesome. Wait, that's really cool. I'll have to ask about that later. Yeah, you can actually see the little concrete counterweight at the top of the closer tower. That goes all the way down when the bridge goes up. This is right by Chinatown. Now, we also tried a couple other designs. This is on the left is a Page Bascule Bridge. There are very few of these that were ever developed. Oh, sorry, I gotta back up. This was built in 1894. This was also the first major vertical lift bridge built in the United States. Started here in Chicago. Again, this started here in Chicago. And both of those types are everywhere. What isn't everywhere are these other two experimental designs that we tried. On the right is a Rawl Bascule Bridge. You can look closely and see a wheel that actually rolls down a track and the bridge would go up. And on the other side is a Page Bascule. If any of you know how these bridges work, please let me know. Please talk to me afterwards. I can't find any information. I have no idea what's happening here. Both of these are locked in position. Both of these are on the South Branch. So we were also still able to sometimes build swing bridges, but if we set them on land. This is just south of the Cortlandt Street Bridge, which we will be talking about a little bit later. This is called the Z6 Swing Bridge. It is one of a kind. You can actually see they built it asymmetrically, so it doesn't block the Nook and the river as it's crossing. Then there's this one of my favorites. This is the Cherry Avenue Bridge. This is, again, still here. That is a massive 140-ton concrete block that is suspended over the land. And this bridge was set on one bank, so it would actually still swing open, and that concrete block would swing towards us, and it would open up the entire waterway. But these still could not work. We needed something better. Vertical lift bridges, ugly. Page and Rawl Bascule bridges, what are those things? Rolling lift bridges, they can't survive our marshland. City of Chicago is getting desperate. They send their engineers all over the world to try to figure out what they might be able to do, and they go to London. Any of y'all been to London? Any of y'all seen the bridge I'm about to show you? This was built between 1883, and 1894, I want to say. I'm actually, don't quote me on those years, I might be wrong. Chicago saw that. It is a bascule bridge. It is a trunnion bascule bridge. So you remember how bascule was like a seesaw? So instead of it being like a rocking chair, this is literally just a seesaw. The trunnion is an actual axle. That's like the front of the seesaw. I'll actually show you kind of what some of this looks like in a little bit. We're like, we can do that. And in 1902, we built the most historic bridge in Chicago. It is in Lincoln Park. It is very unassuming. You would have no idea that this is the first bridge of the most common type of drawbridge ever built in the United States. And the second, I believe it's the second in the entire world. It's right here in our backyard in Lincoln Park. Actually just lied a little bit. Milwaukee built a bridge kind of just like it 3 months earlier. Maybe just by 3 months. But theirs got destroyed in 1975. They took it down. We protect our bridges. So we don't have the first bridge, we have the oldest bridge. It's important. We need journalistic integrity up here. And so this takes us, this is what the edge looks like. We're going to be looking at this photo a few times, and this is what takes us to the modern era. Modern bascules, a city matures, 1910s to the present. So I want us to look very closely at this bridge because the engineers of the city, John Erickson was the city engineer who put this together. He was very proud of it, but the architects of the city, the planners of the city did not like it. They still did not think it was beautiful enough. Look at those massive haunches that it has. You see that ridge in the ends of the bridge? Things, those little ridges. So that's actually a rack and pinion system. That's actually what that's what allows the bridge to lift. There are 3 little gears underneath each of those trusses, and the teeth of that gear grab the rungs of that ladder, and that's what rolls the bridge open. Because that system is on the outside of the bridge, they had to make the bridge that shape. They had no choice. So how did we get to here? The Wabash Bridge, which in 1930 was called the, quote, handsomest bridge in the world. That's right, we had the handsomest bridge in the world. And what about this? This is also a trunnion bascule bridge, the one that I showed you before. By the way, this is the Deering Bridge on Ashland and Fullerton. What's going on here? These are all trunnion bascules. Well, let's actually take a look at how these bridges work and what we were able to do. Is this video going to work?
Let me come see if I can make it work.
It doesn't, we actually don't need audio.
They won't see that.
Oh, they won't see this. Oh, okay.
Different thing. But if we can maybe, I don't.
It is totally okay. It is totally okay. You
Describe
can come up to me
your
after the show
language.
and I can describe. In fact, fortunately, I included a couple of screenshots of something similar. By the way, this is, I had the opportunity when I was working for the Chicago Department of Transportation to go underneath the 95th Street Bridge. This is Kevin Segerson. He's the man who coordinates every single bridge lift. Those are actually gears that are going to actually make the bridge work. And if you want to orient yourself with how these bridges look, go to the McCormick Bridge House Museum. It's an amazing place, and you can actually see these. But when the Lake Street Bridge was under construction, you actually got a chance to see where these gears were in relation to the bridge itself. They took down the bridge house. Now, this is going to be difficult to describe for the audience online, but look at that curve. Do you see that curve at the very top corner? And if you look very closely, there are these little ridges. That is the exact same structure that's on the outside of this. Here's actually a better view of inside the 95th Street Bridge. That is an internal rack and pinion system. We figured out how to actually put that on the inside. It was a man named Alexander von Babo, who is I only know his name because it's awesome. He was an Austrian engineer who came to Chicago, and he showed us this system, and this freed up the rest of our bridges to look like this, because all of a sudden you had the opportunity for architects and for what I love, urban planners, to decide the aesthetic of the city. And this is very important because in 1909, apologies for the whiplash, Daniel Burnham and friends put together the 1909 Plan of Chicago. We were rebuilt from the Great Chicago Fire, and we wanted to show the values that we wanted to build our city with. Now, anyone here familiar with the City Beautiful movement? Oh, all right, a few of us. So the City Beautiful movement is this idea that if we build a city intentionally to look beautiful, people are going to act in a beautiful manner. Jury's still out on whether or not that works, but they were convinced of it, and that's why Chicago is also called the city in a garden. Because in this plan, we dictated so much space for public art, for sculptures, so much space for gardens and parks and places to explore. And part of this was we wanted our city to look like it worked like magic, just like what I'd said before. That Cortlandt Street Bridge, those swing bridges, those vertical lift bridges, this bridge, it's showing us too much. We want, when a bridge lifts, we want it to look like a magician is acting. And that's what they were able to figure out how to do. This is actually the ideal bridge that they showed, and it looks a lot like Wabash, and Wabash wasn't built for another 20 years. Over time, we learned how to make our bridges even more streamlined and more beautiful. So you can actually see the values of the city playing a role in how our bridges began to get built. And now we have incredible structures like this. The building of the McCormick Bridge House Museum. Our friends. Now, in 1905, in 1905, a man named Joseph Strauss traveled to Chicago. Joseph Strauss had some other ideas on how we can evolve our bridges. He figured out that we could build bridges with counterweights above ground. It saves a lot of materials costs. Of course, you're still showing everyone how everything works, which is not what the city wanted, but if it's in an industrial area, again, it's way cheaper because you don't have to dig a gigantic pit in the ground, and you can see it. This is the Chicago Northwestern Bridge. It is stuck open permanently, but I'm very glad the city has protected it. This is the St. Charles Airline Bridge. Joseph Strauss designed this bridge. Joseph Strauss designed this bridge. Joseph Strauss designed this bridge. This is by Lakeshore Drive. Joseph Strauss designed this bridge at Jackson Street, and then Joseph Strauss designed this bridge. That's right. We had him first. He cut, the man who built the Golden Gate Bridge, cut his bridge building teeth here in our incredible city of Chicago. And I think that's pretty cool. And thanks to him, and thanks to this generations and generations of profoundly dumb morons, and even more generations of brilliant people, we were able to build a city. To quote another Tribune writer, I wish I remembered these authors, Chicago is a metropolis welded together by our bridges. And how fortunate it is that we live in a city that could build this. Look at this. This is the newest bridge in downtown Chicago. Actually, the newest drawbridge in Chicago. It was built in the 1980s, I want to say. Oh, you know what? Columbus might be a little bit newer. But this looks so similar. This is at Randolph. This looks so similar to every other bridge that we have shown you. Sorry, Columbus was in the 70s. This was in the 80s. The design, we could stop innovating. We had already landed on the perfect system, and each bridge is a little bit unique, but it's just so incredible that we were able to put all this together. But it's important to tell the story because our bridges are coming down. These bridges are aging. This is the Chicago Avenue Bridge. Anybody who's trying to get east to west in Chicago is probably either very angry at Cortland or very angry at this one. This one was taken down. This is Division Street. It's up next. And this is North Avenue. It was taken down a little while ago to build that massive suspension bridge, also by Goose Island. We need to appreciate these bridges while we have them, because again, they're not going to last forever. And I think we need to continue to tell their stories. And thank you so much for being here as I told y'all some stories. Before I ask for any questions, what was my time? Out of here.
A+.
Amazing. Before I ask any questions, does anybody here know how a Rawl or a Page Basco bridge works? All right, worth a shot. What questions do y'all have? Oh, it was the cheapest. Sorry. Yes, sorry if I misspoke there. Yes. So the Scherzer Rolling Lift Bridge, it was because to get a little physicsy, where the force was being deployed was constantly moving as the bridge was rocking upwards. You had asked, for the online audience, you had asked why the Scherzer Rolling Lift Bridges, you were asking why they weren't working as well. The Trunnion Basco Bridge, that trunnion, that axle was fixed in position, so everything moved around it. It was way more stable, and it had way fewer moving parts. Oh, right there. Oh, That is a very good question. So she was asking, oh, what's the decision-making process like for when we keep a bridge in place, when we lock it in the up position, when we lock it in the down position? So first things first, a lot of our bridges have landmark protections. The city, I'm as excited as I am that the city is so good at protecting our bridges from getting taken down. It really only, the reason Chicago Avenue came down was it was just absolutely rusted through. Yeah, unfortunately. The I wish the city was better at telling the stories, because the city will, if a bridge was built by a significant constructor, like Joseph Strauss's bridges are going to be sticking around for a long time because they're connected to the man. But again, all of y'all were surprised. Nobody knows this. The city doesn't tell this story. If a bridge is stuck in the up position, a lot of times that's because they don't want to go through the process of raising it whenever they need. And most of the bridges on the North Branch are actually stuck in the fixed position. Portland does not raise anymore. The swing bridge that I was showing you does not raise anymore because navigation is just not important on the North Branch. All those manufacturers left. Actually, the reason why that Chicago Northwestern Bridge is still in the up position, there is one more manufacturer, Prairie Materials, that still uses barges going down the water, and they would not be able to fit under that bridge.
So many of the yards closed.
Yes.
And keep still in the main part of the city.
Yeah, so many.
That's a main thing. You know, we still get the right to look at all bridges in Chicago several times a year.
I completely neglected to share. Oh my gosh, I completely neglected to share. Yes, our bridges downtown still raise, but as this gentleman just mentioned, our bridges, all of the industrial traffic gets routed through the Calumet River. So the only time our bridges actually lift is when sailboats are going from dry dock to the lake and vice versa. They lift one at a time, kind of like you're doing the wave at a baseball game. Go White Sox, by the way. Joe wanted me to include that, and go White Sox. And that's how we do it. Only Wednesdays and Saturdays in the spring and fall. Oh, cool. Oh, that's awesome. That's a great plug. There is a conference that is going to be broadcast on the Mississippi, about the Mississippi River. And you said, what's it called? Nobel Conference in October. Sounds good. Great plug.
It's got the big metal weights that you can see. It's painted, and it's very unique in a sense compared to what the bridges are that you have on the screen.
Oh, on Cermak. So I believe, so that one is actually just past, sorry for the whiplash. Yeah, so that is the, that is actually another Scherzer rolling lift. It is the same kind as this one. Sorry, wow, that, I put a lot of slides in here. It's the same kind as this one. So that is the only road Scherzer rolling lift bridge that I believe we have. It's from, I believe, 1905, I want to say, 1904, 1905. That entire area is a historic district. All the warehouses around it look just as they did back in the early part of the 20th century. It's another great bridge. They had to, they just had to keep reinforcing it. They have to do a lot of maintenance. Question back there? Ooh, you know what? That is a wonderful question. If I had an unlimited budget, what materials would I use to make the bridge? Honestly, I would just call in the best historians and I would try to restore the exact materials that were used for the bridges that we've kind of always had. Because a lot of those materials we've had to evolve how we built them because, you know, economies change and what's cheap and what's expensive changes. I'd want to keep also maybe tuning them up in a way that doesn't require as much maintenance. I don't know. That's a great question. Yes, it does. This is this is the only bridge on the Chicago River that requires 24-hour bridge tenders. They're stationed up on Lumber Street, not too far away. How does it work? You have to honk your horn a few times. You have to call them. Okay. Cool. I should.
And this guy was a pretty good sized cruiser. And he saw a sign downtown that said all the city bridges are 17 feet. He didn't realize this wasn't a city bridge. No.
Oh no. So a guy approaches the bridge. He thinks it's a 17-foot bridge because that's what all city bridges are. But this is only 10 or 11 because it is the height of the river. Sorry, I'm repeating for the people online. That's insane. Gosh. Oh no, he actually hit it. Yeah, these bridges, when it gets too hot, sometimes they have to hose these down because the metal expands. Yep. Picking up what you're putting down. Yes. Gosh, that is a wonderful question. Asking about the Little Calumet River and how old those bridges are. Are you talking those like the beautiful blue trusses? Or am I thinking of the Calsag Canal? I'm gonna call them beautiful. To be completely honest, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know too much about the Little Calumet. Yeah. Oh, yes. So there are a couple of yes. So that there's a bright red vertical lift bridge. Oh yes, there's the Major Taylor Trail Bridge. Yeah, I haven't actually been down there. I plan to go down like next month or something to really check those out. There are a lot more of these industrial vertical lift bridges on the Calumet. If you cross the Skyway, you can look over. Those were the Norfolk Southern. There are also a couple other of these wacky page bascules. Again, the one on the left. There are only 4 of these left in existence, and this is one of them. And 2 of the others are right there as well.
One more question?
I don't know.
Yes, it is just like a seesaw. It's like kind of like the French translation, similar to seesaw. Yeah.
Well, let's get
Cool. Thank you for the opportunity.
So you will have plenty of time to ask all of your bridge questions to Mitchell, who is now trapped in this basement until you are done with him. I have a question, though, for all of you who attended this evening, which is, have you noticed that we have one of the wooden pattern gears from the old North Avenue Bridge right when you walk into the museum out in the hallway? If you have not noticed that, go notice it. And then come back in and ask Mitchell about it. Thank you all so much for attending this evening. Another round of applause for our speaker. Thank you, everyone.